A big hello to our Highlights Foundation family. We're so happy to have you here with us today, this afternoon. For those that may not know me, I am Kat Galliano. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the social media manager here at the Highlights Foundation, joining you from Westchester, New York, on the traditional lands of the Siwanoy people. Apart from all the fun things I get to do at the Highlights Foundation, I am also a writer and a reader myself, so I'm very, very excited to welcome our friends and faculty, Alyssa Reynoso Morris, who will be teaching the two-night mini, Getting the Gig on Speaking Opportunities for Storytellers, coming up on August 6th and 8th, and Jreije, who will be leading Successful School Visits, a three-part online course on August 28th with also special guests. Their upcoming courses are beneficial to all creatives, so I am thrilled to welcome both of them and to be able to chat with them today. However, before we dive in, I just want to remind our viewers that joining in any Highlights Foundation sessions to do so with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. So let's get started. My very first question is, part of being an author and illustrator is getting out there to get your books to the kids. Why have you both made visits and events a big part of your marketing strategy?
I'll let George take this one first.
Sure. Yeah, there really are two ways to reach children. It's talking to them directly and also writing stories for them. And we love to do both. Sometimes it can be really scary to make the jump to actually facing with them directly, and sometimes that can be challenging as well. But I really love to do it because it allows kids two things, right? The first is to put a face to the name that goes generally at the bottom of the books that they're reading. And that makes a huge difference because it really normalizes this idea of authors are just like you. We're not special or better, or we're not trying to do anything other than what they're trying to do. And I think that makes books a lot more accessible and safe, because some books can feel inaccessible. Sometimes they felt inaccessible to me as a child to a degree. And the other thing is it helps the folks who are around kids feel more comfortable with, the material, the authors. Sometimes people have pre-held beliefs. And when you can get through those people and get by those beliefs, the whole community around them kind of rallies around these books that we're trying to really get in those children's hands. And I know that we've seen that be a struggle more and more in this divisive times, but events are a great way to do that and to face directly with those people, because again, children are not necessarily the end buyers of children's books always, because children don't necessarily make money. Parents, librarians, and teachers, and so we got to get to them too.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, as a children's book author specifically, it's important to be strategic and think about where your target audience is. And while it's great to partner with bookstores, while it's great to, figure out go to conferences like ALA and things like that, there's schools everywhere you go. And so being able to reach these schools is an opportunity for you to share your book, share your message, and you're doing it directly to the students. Like in one school visit, you can meet literally hundreds of students. I remember one of my biggest assemblies, I met with like 700 kids in one day. So as opposed to like if you're organizing an event, you have to specifically market it, and it can be a more daunting task. So schools are a great way to be able to reach your target audience directly. Oftentimes, if the school is very like senior and has done it before, they send information home so that parents know, hey, this author's coming and this is their book, and you can order the book ahead of time and they'll sign the copies, or sometimes the schools buy the book. So it's a nice way to reach the audience, sell some books, and also potentially make some money, because there is an honorarium that you can also get during those types of visits.
And then those
really good point, by the way, the honorarium, because it really is a win-win for everyone when you do like school visits and school events and things like that.
it's 100 little minds running off home and telling their parents, oh my gosh, I met this person, I learned this. And
Yeah.
there really is something so incredibly powerful about seeing the face behind the person that wrote the thing you're
Yeah.
holding. Like, I remember so vividly being a child and being like, somebody actually wrote this, and like, oh my god, that's the person who's there. Like, it is just such a mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
And not to say that like these kids are going to go off and run and be writers, but still the power of seeing like a different job per se, and like the talent that did the thing that they're holding, it's just those powerful moments really stick with a child. So I totally second and appreciate everything you shared about visiting schools and kids, and events, of course. My second question is there any aspect of all of this that you do out in the world that's still nerve-wracking or tough for you?
Alyssa, you want to take this one first?
Sure. I would have to say trying new material is always super scary, you know? Especially like I write picture books mostly. And so my first book, Reynoso, I Love, I've read it hundreds of times. So I feel really confident reading that one. I basically have the whole thing memorized, and I more or less know how kiddos are going to react to it. It's always different because every group of students is different. But for the most part, I can kind of gauge like when they're gonna get like how they're gonna react to certain parts of the book. But trying like new material, reading a new book for the first time, I'm super super nervous because so much of the writing process is done in isolation, and you hope the book is gonna land a certain way, but you don't really know until you're reading it to them. And so, yeah, like my third book just came out a couple weeks ago, and my first school visit that I did, it was like a summer camp kind of thing. Reading it, I was like sweating, like I was like profusely. You would think I've never done it before, and I've literally done it hundreds of times. But it's always scary, like reading something new for the first time. You're not sure how it's gonna land.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely empathize with that feeling. I'll say two things. The first is that um, designing a presentation that will resonate with children
Mm.
can be difficult because there are things that as adults we think are important, but we have to be able to empathize with our audience, as Alyssa was talking about, and make sure that message is received and is received in an engaging way.
Mm-hmm.
And our courses kind of help with that. What they also help with, um, and this is something that continues to be a very dynamic and evolving thing, navigating contracts and navigating kind of those discussions
Mm.
with the schools themselves to kind of get into the school as well as get paid. There's a whole conversation amongst authors around how to best navigate that, and I think the Highlights Foundation does a great job of offering resources and expertise so that folks who have question marks around those particular areas can get that clarity.
That's such a great point because, like, as creatives, we're so concentrated on the actual work that goes into the book, and then two, like, preparing the presentation to go in, and then, oftentimes some of us are introverts, so it's already a big deal just like for our own selves to be in this sort of exposed situation. But then, of course, like the legality and the contracts and like
Sure.
the business side of it gets extremely overwhelming. And you're just like, I don't want to do anything anymore,
Yeah.
which is why like these courses are so important because, again, like sometimes you don't even think of that side of it and you're just like, I just want to get to publishing book birthday day, only to realize the other hurdle on the other side is all of these things. So thank you for sharing. That's so important
Yeah, I'm
to
really
hear from
glad you
both of
mentioned
you.
that. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, especially in our society, we don't talk about money enough,
Right,
just in general. Like, I remember my first job out of college, like, you're not supposed to talk about how much you make.
right.
And I feel like just culturally, we don't talk about money enough. So we kind of like are adverse about talking about money, and it feels really icky. But you have to do it. You have to talk about money. You have to talk about your race. You have to do it. And definitely our courses will be able to help you navigate that icky process so
Yeah,
that it's less icky.
we're transparent about everything when it comes to, I think, our own operations. So we want to impart that on our students.
Yeah. Oh man, I will definitely be tuning in on the side and sneaking a peek of these courses because while I'm not there yet, I want to at least be knowledgeable enough that when I get there, I don't feel like, oh, what is happening? Because I love to tell this story to people that I did my MFA in writing, just sort of like a backstory in writing for children. But the most embarrassing thing about graduating from my program and feeling like I had accomplished some sort of manuscripts and like I'm like, yes, I'm going to do the thing. I, embarrassingly enough, didn't know how to write a query letter.
Hmm.
Didn't even really know what the word query meant. That is how embarrassed I was that I had no idea. So it's like these courses are so important because like you need to be able to find a safe space to ask these questions about rates, about contracts, about how to put together a presentation for kids and a school versus an event, with adults or with a bookstore. So I am
Yeah.
just so grateful that we are offering these kinds of courses because there's not that many of these style of courses out there, and like we are ultimately all writers trying to get the thing made to make a living to continue doing the thing.
Yeah.
So like
And
I'm just
don't
so
be embarrassed. I know so many MFA programs that they focus so much on the
right.
craft so that you're writing a really good story, which is great. But I don't think enough MFA programs teach about the business component, which
Yeah.
is super important because at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yes.
So don't. I'm glad that you share that because I think that's more common. I think it's way more common than we realize.
I always tell people, I'm like, I'm going to tell you a really embarrassing story as someone that comes from a snooty program, but it's not all it's talked up to be because I didn't even know what the word query or how to write a query letter was. So, I mean, I'm much better at it now, but honestly, like talking about it, being transparent, like that, I feel like is so key. And I think it's also a really beautiful thing about the Kidlit community that we
Yeah.
sort of have that thing within each other that we like to watch out for each other, essentially.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep.
So my next question, which is already my last question, which makes me sad, is what's been your favorite memory from speaking to or interacting with kids about your books?
I'll put you in the hot seat, George. You go
Yeah.
first.
Honestly, it's the post speaking Q&A and like just chatting with the students once you've developed that rapport and they're like, this is my friend, this is not just author person that school paid to come in here like the pro baseball player or something, right? Like knowing that we are here for them and that we do everything that we do for them, the barrier collapses and you can have some really just meaningful, deep conversation. And that is my favorite part of any visit. And that applies to not just the students, but also the teachers and librarians who they themselves have questions and they themselves want to learn things. And just interacting with the whole community around books is so fulfilling.
Yeah, I'd have to echo that. For me, like I measure success based on how many hugs I get at the end.
I
And it's just like kids are just so like adults are cool and everything. But like kids are so much better than adults. I'm sorry, like for anyone that's tuning in and gets offended by that. But like kids are so honest and like they don't hold back the way that adults do, right? Like they don't fully understand like the way that you're supposed to act and they're not overthinking it. It's just like
right.
their reaction is just so genuine and so like pure and like they really respond when you're authentic. So for me, when I do school visits, I'm in my element because I get to be like my weird, hyper, quirky self that did not survive corporate because I was too much. And I'm in these spaces with these kids and the whole message behind most of my writing is that they are enough. And they remind me during those school visits that I am enough too. Because when I'm interacting with them, I can be myself unapologetically. And it just feels really cool to like be yourself. And then at the end of your presentation, getting like bombarded by like 20,000 hugs, right? And like after like school visits, I always like cry, but like in a, like good happy tears because I'm like, yes, I did it. Like this is not just my job, it's not just my career.
Mm-hmm.
This is my calling. Because every time I do a school visit, I feel my batteries completely recharge. And I'm like, okay, this helps me power through the rejections because, you know, I'm still querying. I mean, I'm still on submission with other books, and it makes it all worth it when you see the impact that you're making in these kids' lives. And it's always really cool when kids come up to me and they're like, that's like when they resonate with the characters and they're like, that's me in the book. And I'm like, yes, like mission accomplished. That's exactly what I was going for. So yeah, just seeing their reaction and like how excited they get, and kids are just better than adults. So
And I frequently get kind of notes from new authors who just like they're nervous about doing their first school visit, and I always tell them like you have to do at least one school visit just to really experience that connection. And once they do, they write back and they say, this is life changing. This is exactly why I do what I want to do.
exactly.
And this, like it totally flips their perspective around. It's one thing to think about writing for children in the abstract. It's another thing to actually experience the effect of what you've written.
Yeah.
And once they do it, they get the bug. They love it. A lot of those nerves fall away, and it is just a wonderful thing. But it's just a matter of crafting the right presentation and finding the way to execute that.
Yep. I feel like there's also nothing like positive, unfiltered little minds coming at you with good things, and they're just like all talking over each other, and you're just like soaking it in like a sponge, and like Alyssa said, it's like recharging my battery to keep doing it. Yeah. Well, thank you both. And if you'd like to join Alyssa, well, first of all, before I do my outro, is there anything you'd like to tell people about your courses, kind of preview, before we like wrap up?
I'll just say, if you have questions, reach out directly. Like, we're happy to answer any questions you have on Instagram or otherwise. Don't be a stranger. Don't be shy.
Yeah, I'm excited to take your course too. I feel like there's so much that we can learn from each other. And for the record, like my background was not in marketing. My background was not in like publicity or anything like that. But I've learned so much from other authors, and then, you know, been able to do it successfully. And it, when I think about it, it's like kind of nuts. But like last year alone, I did 67 visits. You learn a lot during that time. So learn from our mistakes. Let us make the process as painless as possible so that you can soak in all the love and all the hugs without having to worry about the anxiety that comes along with the business component.
I think that's actually great that you mentioned that, because like there is a thing of as burnout of doing too much. So I think that's great that you're like mentioning that too. You're like, what is kind of the sweet spot for you? Because like my sweet spot could be different from George's and versus yours. So it's like it's good to have that conversation about, you know, to not all of a sudden just like be lying on the floor and be like, I can't function, I'm so tired. So we're gonna officially wrap it up now. And so if you'd like to join Alyssa for Getting the Gig, a 2-night mini on speaking opportunities for storytellers, this is taking place on August 6th and 8th. And if you'd like to join George on Successful School Visits, a 3-part online course that will be kicking off at the end of August on the 28th. You can register for both of these classes on our website, highlightsfoundation.org. And lastly, you can purchase Alyssa and George's books at our virtual bookshop powered by bookshop.org. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for coming in and stopping in, whether you're watching live or you'll be watching later. We're so happy that we have you, and we can't wait to see you online.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
you so much.